Hi, I'm Loretta, and I'm really glad that you showed up today. Welcome to my sewing room.
Good morning, everybody. So here we are with block number 11. I've got the pieces here on my cutting table arranged in the order that they're to be pieced in. Once again, I'm going to start in the upper left-hand quadrant and move my way around the block clockwise. So I will meet you over at the sewing machine and we'll get started. Okay, here we are at the sewing machine, and I am going to chain piece this block to save some time. So the first thing we're going to do is sew together these corner triangles. And once again, this is one of the easier blocks in the quilt. So we're just going to match these corners and sew it with our scant 1/4 inch seam allowance. I'm sewing on my Bernina 790 Plus with a 37D presser foot. The dual feed is engaged, and my scant 1/4 inch, this is my 1/4 inch guideline on the throat plate, and I'm just making sure that my fabric is just to the left of that line so I can see the entire line. Stitch point is 2.0. The other settings are just standard, haven't changed the tension or anything like that. And here's the second set of corner triangles. And once again, I'm just working in a clockwise direction. I've got these pieces laid out to the left of my machine and just grabbing the next one in order. And that one got misaligned. So starting again with my fabric scrap, I'm just going to rip this seam out. I also just realized that I have the wrong needle in. I was sewing some heavier fabrics and I needed a larger needle. So I am going to change needles and I will be right back. Okay, needle changed. I realized I had a denim needle in there because I'd been sewing some waxed canvas. So now I've switched to a universal needle size 70-10. That will leave not so big holes in my fabric. Next unit, ready to go. And this is the final corner unit. Alright, we'll get these cut apart and pressed. I'm going to press the seams open as usual, and then we'll move on to adding the other triangles to the sides of these. Okay, we've got these all pressed open. I'm going to put these back where they belong in the block layout so I don't get confused about which of the units gets added next. So once again, I'm going to work in a clockwise rotation, starting in the upper left. And these are the two that go together next. Right sides together. Starting at the top or the bottom, whichever one you're more comfortable with. Just making sure that down here it's aligned. At the bottom edge, raw edges are all lined up. And at the top edge, there's not a whole lot to match, but if you look really closely, you'll see that this point, this V in here, is going to be 1/4 inch from the edge. And then moving on to the next one, which is the upper right hand quadrant of the block. And this one is the lower right hand quadrant. And here's the final one. All right, cut those apart, get them pressed, and we will be ready to do the final assembly of putting all these 4 quadrants into the final block. Okay, I've got all those pieces pressed the seams open as usual, and now I've got the 2 top sections of the block, the upper left hand and upper right hand quadrants. So put those together, matching up the raw edges on both these long sides here, making sure that you get everything oriented correctly so that you're stitching the correct seam. You don't want to stitch this seam, you want to stitch this seam. Go in slowly at first, lift my presser foot, and now we'll do the bottom half of the block. All right, those 2 halves are now put together, and we'll press that seam open on each of these and then join them into the final block. And here we have the 2 halves of the block, and we're ready to join those. So we'll just put them right sides together. Using a clip, I will match up these centers and get all my raw edges aligned. And I do plan on doing a video on proper pressing techniques after the first of the year. Oops, and I've started on the wrong line again. I was using this line instead of that line. So I actually didn't really stitch anything. Just barely got started on that. Getting close to the center. And that is is it. That is block number 11 finished. So I will get that last seam pressed, and we'll meet over at the cutting table and I'll show you the finished block. And here's our finished block number 11. There's 4 total of these blocks, and I hope you enjoyed this video, and we'll see you next month for block number 12.